The alarms shrieked without warning, echoing through the empty halls of Outpost the Los 9. Merrick Voss's heart slammed against his ribs as he bolted down the corridor, his boots clanging against the metal floor. The baby's cries pierced the wailing sirens, high-pitched and desperate. He could see her through the glass of the nursery, her tiny hands gripping the air, eyes wide with fear. Something massive moved outside, a shifting shadow that darkened the ground, a shape that didn't belong to any animal Merrick had ever known. He kicked open the nursery door and scooped the child into his arms. Her weight was light, almost impossibly so, but her trembling made it feel heavy, every second stretching endlessly. The shadow outside shifted again. The creature's silhouette was immense, scales glinting faintly in the red emergency lights. Merrick swallowed a scream. Its head turned toward the building, eyes glowing like twin suns, intelligent and watching. It didn't roar, didn't move aggressively, but the sheer size and presence made Marek's stomach knot. "Stay close," he whispered, voice low and urgent, not sure if the baby understood, but he needed to speak. He sprinted toward the reinforced doors at the end of the hall, pausing only to press the override. The heavy metal shutter groaned as it descended. Behind him, a series of taps rattled the walls, sharp, deliberate. The dragon, or whatever it was testing him. Not attacking, not yet. Just curious, watching, waiting. Marek's mind raced. He ran, ducking under a low pipe and sliding across the floor to avoid a sudden tremor. The floor shook violently, dust and small debris raining from the ceiling. Marek's pulse surged. If the outpost structure failed, the baby would have no chance. He glanced up through a cracked skylight. The creature moved with uncanny precision, avoiding fallen metal beams, its long neck weaving around hazards. Its bioluminescent scales shifted through colors, from deep violet to a soft, warm amber. That alone told Merrick something important. It was alive in ways humans had never fully understood. A quick decision struck him. The nursery's emergency hatch opened to the outer deck. If he could reach it, he could put a barrier between them, even if temporary. Merrick darted toward the exit, clutching the baby tighter. His sleeve brushed against the console. Sparks jumped. He cursed under his breath. One wrong move and the whole deck could short-circuit. He dove through the hatch just as the creature leaned forward, massive jaws opening, but instead of snapping, it paused. A strange, almost contemplative tilt of the head. Merrick froze for a heartbeat, then sprinted across the exposed metal deck. The wind hit them like a physical force, whipping his hair into his face and tugging at the baby in his arms. Behind him, the shadow stretched long and thin across the outpost, moving with uncanny intelligence. Merrick risked a glance. The creature's eyes followed him, unblinking, but there was no malice, only a weight of awareness. It knew him, understood the threat he posed to its world, but had not yet struck. That pause, so small, so delicate, felt almost like a lifeline. He reached the edge of the deck, where jagged rocks dropped into the planet's red haze. The baby stirred, reaching toward the darkness. Marek's breath caught. Something about the way she craned her neck, unafraid, drew his attention. The creature shifted closer, its enormous claw hovering just inches above the deck. Marek's mind raced for options. There was no conventional weapon here that could harm it without endangering them both. He realized he had to rely on wit, not firepower. A thought struck him like a spark. The creature was studying the baby, not him. That small, innocent life had already begun to influence the monster's behavior. Marek's hands tightened around her, a surge of hope threading through the fear. Perhaps, just perhaps, the child held some key to survival, a way to turn danger into trust. But before he could test that idea, a sudden rumble shook the deck, stronger this time. The creature recoiled slightly, then slammed one claw against the metal, sending a shudder through the entire outpost. Merrick stumbled, heart leaping into his throat. The baby whimpered but remained still in his arms, sensing the tension. The creature's bioluminescence flared bright amber, then faded to deep violet. It was signaling something, communicating, Merrick realized, though he had no idea what. The winds howled, the red haze thickened, and the outpost groaned under the strain. Marek's mind raced with one thought: they could not stay here. Somewhere beyond the deck, beyond the shadow, was their only chance. He had to move the baby, guide the creature, survive. But even as he made that choice, a low, resonant growl rumbled from deep in the shadow, vibrating through the metal floor. The creature wasn't attacking, yet, but Merrick understood in that instant that the real test had just begun. Something about the sound made the baby stir again, reaching toward the shadow. Merrick froze, heart hammering. The creature's massive eyes narrowed, not in anger, but in a strange, unspoken recognition. And then, in a movement faster than Merrick expected, the shadow shifted, stretching across the deck like it wanted to embrace them. Marek's mind went blank for a moment, caught between fear and awe. The baby gurgled softly, tiny fingers brushing the creature's scales. A shiver ran through the enormous beast. Merrick felt it too, an almost human hesitation, a pause in the heartbeat of danger. But the moment did not last. From deep below the deck, a tremor erupted, shaking the outpost violently. Marek's grip tightened. The baby cried louder. And the creature shifted again, this time moving in a way Merrick could not predict. He swallowed hard, knowing the next second could change everything, and that whatever came next would reveal not just the creature's intent, but whether they could survive the shadowed hatchling together. Marek's boots pounded against the battered metal of the outer deck, every step a battle against the gusting wind that whipped across the jagged cliffs of the Los Nine. The baby clutched his shoulder, small fingers digging into the fabric of his jacket, her cries blending with the howl of the storm. Behind them, the shadow loomed, enormous and silent, sliding across the deck with terrifying grace. Merrick didn't dare look directly at it. One wrong glance, one hesitation, and the child could be lost. The emergency hatch slammed behind him, shaking the deck. Sparks flew from exposed wires. Marek's hand shot out instinctively to steady the baby as the vibration rattled through his arms. He felt the weight of responsibility crush him. This was not just survival anymore. Every decision mattered. Every step could be their last. He needed to think fast, act faster, or the alien creature could end the chase before it even truly began. Ahead, a narrow walkway led to the lower observation platform. Marek's eyes scanned for anything he could use. There, emergency biolights mounted along the railing. He pulled the baby close and pressed her against his chest. With one arm he twisted the control panel and flicked the lights on. Bright white beams cut through the crimson haze of the storm, revealing the path ahead. The dragon froze mid-step, tilting its massive head as if surprised by the sudden brilliance. Its scales flickered with violet and amber light, shifting rapidly as though trying to process the new stimulus. Marek's pulse jumped. He had a small advantage. He sprinted across the walkway, careful to avoid the loose panels that clanged with every step. The baby's tiny heartbeat thrummed against his chest, a fragile rhythm that anchored him. Behind them, the shadow moved in eerie synchronization, almost as if it were mirroring his path. Marek's mind raced. It wasn't just following, they were being studied. The creature was learning, adapting, judging. He swallowed a lump of fear and pressed on. A sudden tremor shook the deck beneath him. Metal groaned and loose screws and wires rattled like a warning. Merrick stumbled, barely catching his balance, the baby crying out. He spun to glance at the creature. Its eyes glowed brighter now, a soft amber, and its body tensed. But instead of attacking, it lifted a claw delicately, brushing a broken panel aside without harm. Marek's chest tightened with disbelief. It was intelligent, aware, careful in a way no wild animal could ever be. He realized he wasn't facing a beast, he was facing a mind. Marek's next decision came fast. The observation platform led to a series of maintenance corridors that twisted like a maze. If he could reach the inner dome and seal the secondary doors, he could put distance between the baby and the creature. He darted toward the corridor, ducking under a low support beam. Sparks showered from overhead conduits, and a panel collapsed near his feet. The dragon followed, but it slowed, careful not to crush anything in its path. Merrick realized he could use that. He picked up a loose section of conduit, swinging it to block one narrow passage. The creature paused, lifted its massive head, and let out a low, vibrating hum that Merrick couldn't identify as either warning or question. He bolted through the alternate route, heart racing, adrenaline sharpening every sense. The baby pressed against him, crying softly now, and Merrick whispered soothing words, trying to maintain a calm that he did not feel. Halfway through the corridor, he noticed the faint glow of alien fungi along the walls. A flash of insight hit him. The creature had avoided these plants before. He scooped the baby and leapt over the glowing clusters, the spores releasing faint motes of light as he passed. Behind them, the dragon hesitated, sniffing the air, then carefully navigated around the fungus. A tiny victory, but enough to give Merrick a sense of hope. The path opened onto a secondary deck, high above a chasm of jagged rock. The wind was stronger here, whipping the baby's hair into her face and tearing at Marek's jacket. He crouched, chest heaving, and scanned for the next route. The only option was a narrow beam spanning the chasm. One misstep and both of them would fall to the glowing red depths below. Merrick swallowed hard. He had faced danger before, but never like this. Never with such stakes, never with a life in his arms so completely dependent on him. The dragon's shadow shifted across the platform. Merrick froze. Its eyes were locked on him, glowing amber, and for a heartbeat, Merrick felt the weight of its judgment. Then it tilted its head slightly, an almost imperceptible motion, and stepped back. It seemed to acknowledge the path he had chosen. Merrick took that as permission. Slowly, deliberately, he inched across the narrow beam, one hand clutching the baby, the other brushing against the cold metal for balance. Halfway across, a loose rivet gave way. Marek's foot slipped, and the baby's small cry jolted him upright. He grabbed her closer, twisting to regain balance, and felt the beam tremble. The dragon let out a low, vibrating growl, not a roar of aggression but of warning. Merrick froze again, heart hammering, then took a deep breath and inched forward, step by step. The beam held. Small victory. Tiny payoff. As he reached the far side, Merrick dropped down onto the deck with the baby safe in his arms. The wind tore at his jacket, but the child was unharmed. Behind them, the shadow shifted again, moving with uncanny precision. Marek's chest tightened as he realized something profound. The dragon wasn't just following. It was watching, learning, judging their every move and waiting for something. A sudden crack split the air, louder than the storm, coming from the far edge of the deck. Merrick spun. The shadow surged forward, scales flaring bright amber, and the creature's massive head lunged, not in attack but toward the baby. Marek's breath caught. He didn't understand its intent. Was it anger? Curiosity? Or something entirely different? The baby reached out instinctively toward the glowing scales, her tiny fingers brushing against the air where the shadow loomed. The creature paused, its glowing eyes meeting Marek's as if issuing a silent challenge. Marek's pulse thundered in his ears. One wrong move, and the delicate balance they'd fought so hard to achieve could shatter. He took a deep breath and whispered, "Easy, just stay close." And in that moment, the shadow shifted again, sudden, deliberate, and impossibly fast, stretching across the deck as though reaching for them both. Marek's heart jumped. Whatever came next would decide everything. Merrick pressed the baby tightly to his chest, feeling the rapid beat of her tiny heart against his ribs. The deck beneath them trembled as the alien creature loomed closer, its massive shadow stretching and shifting across the red haze. For a moment, Merrick froze, unsure whether it would strike or retreat. Then, to his surprise, it lowered its enormous head, keeping just enough distance to avoid contact, yet its glowing amber eyes followed every movement. Merrick realized something he hadn't before. This wasn't a predator, it was studying the child. He took a cautious step forward, scanning the jagged terrain ahead. The secondary deck led to a narrow corridor lined with panels and piping, but it also gave the dragon room to maneuver. Marek's mind raced. If he could guide the creature, maybe he could turn this dangerous encounter into a chance for survival. He whispered to the baby, "Don't be afraid. Just stay with me." Her tiny fingers clutched his collar, her wide eyes fixed on the shadow that seemed to move with an intelligence beyond comprehension. Merrick spotted a pattern in the creature's movement. Whenever the baby whimpered or shifted, the dragon's scales flickered with warm colors, violet to amber, amber to soft green, almost like a reaction to emotion. He had no idea how, but the child's presence affected it. Acting on impulse, he lowered himself slightly, presenting the baby's face in the direction of the shadow without letting her slip. The dragon froze. Its massive head tilted, its glowing eyes locking onto the infant. Merrick held his breath. Then, astonishingly, the creature inched closer, careful, almost gentle in its movement. A flash of hope shot through him. Merrick realized that the baby might hold the key, not just to calming the creature but perhaps to understanding it entirely. He remembered old theories about alien species responding to biochemistry and emotional cues. Could it be that this creature recognized something human in her, innocence, vulnerability, or even a genetic pattern unique to humans? Merrick had no answers, but he had a plan. Let the baby engage first, observe carefully, and act only when necessary. He crouched and whispered, "Reach out. Just a little." The baby's fingers trembled, then extended toward the creature's scales, brushing the faint glow at the edge of its shadow. The dragon stiffened for an instant, then slowly lowered a massive claw, careful not to crush anything in its path. Merrick felt his chest tighten. The creature wasn't attacking, it was offering, or maybe testing, a connection. Before he could process it, the deck trembled violently. A low rumble echoed from the depths of the outpost, shaking loose panels and sending sparks cascading from exposed wiring. The dragon reared slightly, its glowing patterns pulsing faster, almost frantic. Merrick gripped the baby tighter, scanning the area. The tremor had cracked part of the deck edge, making their path forward more dangerous. One misstep and they could plummet into the jagged canyon below. Thinking quickly, Merrick reached for a loose support beam and balanced himself, guiding the baby carefully. The dragon mirrored his movement in an uncanny display of intelligence, shifting its massive body to maintain the space it had created. Merrick realized it was not just aware, it was protective, testing him as much as observing. Every choice he made now would either earn its trust or trigger aggression. He inched toward a control panel partially hidden beneath a collapsed conduit. Sparks hissed from the damaged wires, but the panel still worked. Merrick activated a series of emergency lights, sending beams of bright white cutting through the crimson storm. The dragon froze again, tilting its massive head. Its bioluminescent scales shifted, now glowing soft amber instead of violet, and Merrick sensed it was watching the baby's reaction more than his own. Encouraged, he whispered, "See? Nothing to fear." The baby gurgled, reaching toward the lights, and the creature's massive claw shifted closer, not in threat but in curiosity. Merrick felt a surge of adrenaline and awe. He had seen fear, courage, and intelligence in humans before, but this interaction between infant and alien, was beyond anything he had imagined. Suddenly, a metallic screech rang out from below. Part of the deck was buckling under the stress of the tremor. Merrick spun, realizing the baby's tiny fingers could slip at any moment. Without thinking, he dropped to one knee, securing her against his chest and stretching his other hand toward the buckling floor. The dragon's head dipped, its eyes narrowing as it assessed the new threat. Then, in a startling move, it stepped forward, gently nudging a loose panel with its claw to stabilize the walkway. Merrick froze. It was helping him, this massive, alien creature was helping them survive. He exhaled shakily, heart racing, as he guided the baby across the repaired section. Every step was tense. The slightest miscalculation could be catastrophic. The creature stayed close, almost shadowing them, its enormous body moving with precise grace. Merrick's mind buzzed with questions. What did it want, why did it care, and how far could this fragile trust extend? As they reached the edge of the corridor, a soft glow from below caught Merrick's eye. The dragon's eyes flared amber, then green, then faded to deep violet, a series of signals he could not decipher. Merrick realized this wasn't just a test of courage. It was a communication. The creature was intelligent beyond measure and capable of emotions he had never seen. The baby, innocent and unafraid, had sparked something profound, a connection he could not yet name. Before Merrick could take another step, a sharp crack split the air. Something heavy moved in the shadows below, far larger than the tremor. The creature stiffened, claws scraping against the deck. Its eyes locked onto Merrick and the baby. Merrick's breath caught. Whatever lurked beneath, it was drawn to them, and the dragon's behavior suggested it was both a threat and a test. The baby cooed softly, reaching instinctively toward the glow of the dragon's scales. Merrick held his breath, knowing that the next second would determine not just their survival, but whether this incredible bond could deepen or shatter completely. The shadow loomed larger, the unknown presence beneath them waiting, and Merrick realized they were no longer just running for safety. They were stepping into a new, dangerous frontier where every choice would shape the future. Merrick's pulse hammered in his ears as he crouched at the edge of the narrow platform, the baby snug against his chest. The storm outside the Los 9 roared like a living thing, wind tearing at his jacket and the debris-littered deck beneath him. Below, the canyon yawned like a scar across the planet's crimson surface, jagged rocks glowing faintly with molten streaks. Every step forward was a gamble. One slip, one miscalculation, and the baby would fall. But Merrick couldn't stop, not now, not when the shadow loomed, twisting and shifting like it had a mind of its own. The alien dragon moved with terrifying grace, its massive head lowering, eyes glowing a steady amber. Merrick could see the subtle flicker of its scales, violet to amber to green, reacting to every tremor, every movement of the baby. It wasn't attacking. Not yet. It was testing him. Merrick swallowed hard, whispering, "We can do this. Just stay calm, stay close." The baby's tiny fingers clutched his jacket, and for a fleeting second, her innocence radiated a courage he hadn't expected. A sudden screech split the air, a predator from the depths of the canyon, drawn by the commotion. Merrick's stomach lurched. The creature's low growl reverberated across the deck, warning and protective all at once. Merrick realized instantly, the shadow wasn't just curious, it was protective. It had been assessing him and the baby, measuring whether they could survive. Now that instinct would be tested. Without hesitation, Merrick took the baby in one arm and scanned for anything to use as a barrier. A rusted support beam jutted from the deck. He grabbed it and swung it toward the nearest loose panel, forcing a temporary shield between them and the unseen predator. Sparks flew, and the beam clanged against the metal, startling both him and the baby. But it worked. The creature hesitated, its massive body positioning itself as a buffer between the predator and Merrick. Marek's heart raced, mind firing through possibilities. The dragon mirrored his movements with uncanny precision, adjusting its stance, shifting its massive weight, and nudging loose debris into place to block dangerous gaps. Merrick realized this was no ordinary interaction. He and the creature were improvising together, a partnership born of necessity and instinct. The baby, sensing the tension, let out a small gurgle. The creature paused, lowering its head, and for the first time, Merrick saw softness in its massive eyes. They moved carefully across the deck, each step measured against the threat below. Merrick led the baby to a narrow support beam that spanned the canyon. His stomach tightened. One misstep could send them tumbling into molten rocks. The dragon followed but remained just a shadow behind, its claws scrabbling along the deck for balance. Merrick whispered encouragement to the baby, who reached instinctively toward the glowing patterns along the creature's scales. The dragon paused, then lowered a claw, forming a protective arc over them. Marek's chest tightened with a mixture of awe and relief. As they neared the far side, the tremors from below grew stronger, shaking the platform violently. Loose panels slid beneath his boots, sparks flying from ruptured conduits. Merrick adjusted his stance, gripping the baby closer, and shifted a pipe to stabilize the path. The dragon responded in kind, nudging debris aside and creating a makeshift walkway. Marek's mind raced. Every action had consequence. One mistake could undo the delicate trust they had built. Suddenly, a massive shadow moved beneath the deck, larger than any predator Merrick had imagined. The dragon stiffened, emitting a deep, resonant growl that vibrated through the metal floor. Merrick froze, heart hammering. The baby's fingers twitched toward the glowing scales, and the creature leaned down, tilting its massive head in a gesture that was almost invitation. Marek's pulse leapt. It was not aggression, it was trust, fragile and terrifying in its intensity. But the moment shattered with a violent crack. A section of the platform fractured under the tremor, swinging perilously above the canyon. Merrick instinctively pivoted, pressing the baby against his chest, and the dragon reacted immediately. Its enormous tail swept across the deck, knocking a broken panel into place and preventing them from falling. Merrick barely had time to comprehend what had happened. The creature was not just protective, it was actively working with him, anticipating dangers, reacting faster than any human could. Merrick exhaled shakily and moved forward, one careful step at a time. The baby cooed softly, reaching again toward the alien scales, and the dragon lowered its head further, allowing her to brush against it. Marek's chest swelled with a strange, bittersweet hope. He had seen courage, intelligence, and empathy in humans before, but this interaction, between infant and alien, was beyond anything he had imagined. He had no words for it, only the certainty that they had crossed a threshold together. Then, without warning, the air shimmered, and a pulse of bioluminescence shot from the dragon's scales into the sky, a signal of unknown intent. Merrick squinted. Was it calling others? Warning them? Or signaling something larger, something beyond the storm, the outpost, and even the canyon? He couldn't tell. The dragon's eyes met his for a heartbeat, amber glowing brightly as if acknowledging the unknown with him. Marek's stomach clenched. The predator below had not moved, waiting in the shadows. The storm continued to howl. And yet, the creature he had feared, the massive alien that had stalked them, now formed a protective arc over him and the baby, ready to act, ready to defend. Merrick realized with both awe and dread that the true challenge was only beginning. The baby's tiny fingers grazed the dragon's glowing scales again. Its massive head dipped, eyes narrowing, and the air vibrated with anticipation. Marek's heart raced. They had survived the deck, the storm, and the predator's threat, but the pulse in the sky hinted at a far larger force waiting beyond. Something beyond the creature, beyond the planet, beyond their understanding. Merrick inhaled sharply, gripping the baby tightly. The dragon's shadow stretched wide, encompassing them both, and the red haze of the Los Nine seemed to ripple around them. Whatever came next would decide everything, not just survival but the fate of this fragile, growing bond between human and alien. The next step could mean life, or something far beyond anything Merrick had imagined. Marek's arms ached, but he held the baby firmly against his chest as the crimson winds of the Los Nine whipped around them. The dragon's massive form loomed behind, its scales pulsing with soft amber light, now calm, almost protective. The predator from below had vanished, chased off or deterred by the alien's presence. For the first time since the alarms had shrieked, Merrick allowed himself to breathe, briefly. The baby's small coos pressed against him like a lifeline, and he could feel her tiny heartbeat steadying. Somehow they had survived the immediate danger. Somehow, the shadow had not only spared them but had become an unexpected guardian. He scanned the deck. The storm had not yet passed. The wind shredded loose panels and shook the support beams. Merrick knew they couldn't linger. Every second left them exposed to structural collapse, predators, and the unknown forces that seemed drawn to the baby's presence. Yet the dragon remained still, its enormous head dipping lower as if inviting them to step forward. Merrick glanced down at the infant's wide eyes, sparkling with trust, and understood that their next choice would define not just survival, but the bond that had begun in the shadows. Taking a careful step toward the exit ramp, Merrick noticed the subtle glow from cracks in the platform beneath them. It reminded him of molten veins in the canyon walls, dangerous, unstable, and unpredictable. He adjusted his footing, feeling the baby shift in his arms, and whispered softly, "Almost there, stay with me." The dragon mirrored their movement, nudging loose debris with its claw to stabilize the walkway. Marek's chest tightened with awe. Every step, every movement had a consequence, but now human and alien seemed to be moving as one. They reached the far edge of the deck where the outpost's observation dome awaited, a shimmering bubble of reinforced glass and metal. Marek's eyes darted to the entrance. The mechanism was damaged from the earlier tremors. Sparks flickered and the sliding doors groaned. He dropped to one knee, setting the baby gently on his forearm, and twisted the control lever. The doors inched open just enough for them to pass. The dragon hesitated, massive body tensing, but then lowered itself, allowing them entry. Merrick felt a rush of relief, but it was short-lived. He knew the storm outside was not their only threat. Something larger, far beyond this single creature, was watching. Inside the dome, the baby's laughter bubbled, tiny hands reaching toward the glowing patterns of the dragon's scales. Marek's eyes widened. The alien leaned into her touch, a low, rumbling vibration rolling through its chest that Merrick instinctively recognized as a response, contentment or even trust. It was the first moment of calm, fragile and precious, after hours of relentless tension. Merrick felt the weight of responsibility ease slightly. This child, with nothing but innocence and courage, had reached a level of understanding no human alone could have achieved. But as he adjusted to the brief lull, the dragon suddenly shifted, eyes narrowing as its bioluminescence flashed bright amber. A pulse shot from its scales into the sky, sharp, deliberate, and impossible to ignore. Merrick froze. The signal wasn't random. It carried intent. Perhaps it was a warning. Perhaps a call for others of its kind. He realized with a sinking feeling that the shadow they had relied on was connected to something much larger. A network, a species, or even a civilization waiting beyond the planet. The baby gurgled and reached for the dragon again, touching its scales. The creature's massive head dipped, nudging the child gently as if acknowledging the bond. Merrick exhaled, a sense of awe washing over him. He had seen courage, intelligence, and morality shine in humans before, but this, the ability to form trust across species, to inspire gentleness in a being so powerful and alien, was beyond anything he had imagined. Humans could not only survive in this galaxy, they could transform it through empathy, intelligence, and determination. Merrick looked at the glowing eyes of the dragon, trying to read the impossible mind within. He realized something profound. This encounter was not just survival but a beginning. The creature had tested them, measured their courage, and judged their intentions. By acting with compassion and quick thinking, Merrick had forged a fragile but undeniable bond that might change both their lives, and perhaps the lives of the creatures beyond the Los Nine. Suddenly, a deep vibration rolled through the dome, faint but unmistakable. The pulse in the sky repeated, larger this time, brighter. Marek's eyes widened. Whatever had been watching, whatever the dragon had signaled, was responding. He gripped the baby tighter, heart racing, understanding that this was only the start. The shadowed creature had not just protected them, it had introduced them to a larger mystery, one that spanned beyond the outpost, beyond the planet, perhaps beyond the stars themselves. The baby cooed and reached up, her tiny fingers brushing against Marek's cheek. He smiled, a brief, exhausted smile. He had survived impossible odds, relied on his wits, and discovered that courage and empathy could reach across the most unimaginable barriers. Yet, he could feel the tension still lurking, an unspoken warning that their adventure was far from over. Outside, the crimson winds continued to howl, and the dragon's massive shadow stretched toward the horizon. Its glowing amber eyes held intelligence, curiosity, and perhaps a silent promise. They were not alone. Marek's gaze followed the pulse of light as it arced into the darkened sky, wondering who, or what, would answer next. He tightened his hold on the baby. We've come this far, but I think this is just the beginning. And somewhere in the vast, red-tinged expanse of the Los Nine, beyond the storm and the shadow, something else stirred, waiting for them. Something that would challenge their courage, test their bond, and push the limits of human determination. Marek knew it was only a matter of time before the next chapter began. The dragon leaned closer to the baby, protective yet expectant. Marek swallowed, understanding fully that this was no longer a story of survival. It was the start of something far greater, something only humans could face with courage, intelligence, and heart.